This is the Tacoma Dome in Tacoma, Washington. It's a cool building, but I wasn't sure how much wrestling history was going to be there when I wrote this episode. Once I got into it, I realized there were a handful of really memorable segments and matches that went down here. What's up, everyone? I'm Alex, and today in episode 11, I'm counting down my personal top 10 wrestling moments in Tacoma Dome history. The house opened in 1983, and its origin story is more interesting than just big arena with a wood roof. Tacoma had been trying for a long time to get its own major indoor event space. It was built by the city, paid for by the residents, and designed as the kind of place that could host almost anything. That unique roof is still the part that makes Tacoma Dome stand out architecturally. It's one of the largest wooden domes in the world, and it gives the building a distinct Pacific Northwest feel before you even get to anything that happened inside of it. My favorite detail here is that before one of the final roof beams went up, thousands of people from Tacoma got to sign it. So somewhere above the floor, built into this giant wooden dome, are names and messages from the people who helped pay for the place. Now ring that bell and let's get on to the list. At number 10, I've got a WWF match from the summer of 2001 that sounds like an AI hallucination until you look into it. This one came from a SmackDown taping, and on the card, Billy Gunn and Big Show, actually named the Shoguns, faced the Hardy Boys with Lita at ringside. Before I get into the match, this show is the one where Kurt Angle wore the child's cowboy hat during a series of backstage segments with Austin and Deborah. Good shit, pal. Looking these two together is straight up Invasion era, creative has nothing for you weirdness. Mr. Ass was gone, and Billy was working as the one, Billy Gunn, which eroded any personality he had left after the New Age Outlaws breakup. Big Show hadn't joined Team Alliance yet, so why not throw him in a tag team, pal? Team Extreme lost this one after Matt ate the pin after a Cobra Clutch slam behind Mike Chioda's back. I picked this one because I legitimately had zero memory of Big Show and Billy Gunn working together under the Shogun's name, and I'll bet a lot of people don't remember it either. It was a short run for two guys with no real direction, but beating the Hardys gave them a little shine during one of the weirder pockets of the Invasion era. At number 9, I'm going with The Rock defending the WWF Championship against Triple H on Raw in late 1998. DX kicked off this episode with one of their more famous imitation promos, with Triple H channeling Rocky here in a hilarious pissant kind of way. The great one was less than a month into his first title reign after winning the Deadly Games tournament at Survivor Series. He was already tied to the corporation, already carrying the title, and already starting to feel like someone WWF was pushing to the moon. Hunter was still leading DX, before the full main event heel run that would come for him later in 1999. This match makes my list because it's the first time these two faced off for the WWF title. They'd already had a number of great bouts prior to their face-off here, and they'd go on to have even bigger matches in 99 and 2000. On this night though, Tacoma got a snapshot of that rivalry right before it became one of the WWF's biggest title programs in history. Number 8 goes to Eddie Guerrero and John Cena against Brock Lesnar and Big Show from SmackDown in 2004. The match was taped at the Tacoma Dome just a few days before No Way Out, which I covered in my Cow Palace episode, and that's one reason why I'm using this. Eddie was days away from challenging Lesnar for the WWE Championship, while Cena was still trying to get through Big Show and reach the US title. The other reason I'm using it is because of the names involved. All four of them in a regular SmackDown TV tag match is enough for me, especially in a building without a deep list of famous wrestling moments. Brock and Big Show controlled a lot of the match with their size, and Eddie had to work around that the way Eddie usually did. The key spot came late when Kurt Angle interfered and hit both Cena and Big Show with a chair. That pulled enough attention away for Eddie to grab Cena's chain, catch Brock with it, and steal the pin. 3 days later, Eddie beat Brock at No Way Out. Undertaker facing Road Dogg and X-Pac in a handicap match from SmackDown in June of 2000 is next on the list at number 7. Just a few weeks before this, Undertaker had returned to the WWF at Judgment Day 2000 in Louisville as the American Badass. He was back on a big black cruiser, and McMahon-Helmsley faction was already in his path after he targeted them at Freedom Hall. Road Dogg and X-Pac were still a part of that faction in a pseudo-DX kind of way, and this was a 2-on-1 handicap match with the WWF Championship shot attached to it. The match only goes a couple of minutes though. It was booked as a squash anyway. Taker throws both of them around, Road Dogg gets knocked out of the ring, and X-Pac takes the chokeslam for the pin. It's short, but there was no confusion about the point. Taker was back and already knocking down bodies on his way into the title picture. I've got a modern moment slotted in at number 6. Ricochet beating Samoa Joe for the United States Championship at Stomping Grounds 2019. The event was WWE's first pay-per-view in this building, and it's also notable as Ricochet's first main roster singles title win. Stomping Grounds was the product of an abysmal era of sports entertainment. There's no reason for this show to be on replay in your Netflix queue, trust me. But this is one of two matches from that night, in my opinion, that are worth looking back at. Ricochet was still new enough after the recent call-up from NXT that creative could have gone either way with him. He won the 5-way #1 contender match the week before on Raw and got Joe at Stomping Grounds, but there was still some question of whether WWE was going to follow through with the mid-card title push, or if he was just another super athletic guy making a one-time appearance in a title match. Joe helped with that because he wasn't a throwaway champion. He was someone that could still look good in putting Ricochet over. After escaping Joe's coquina clutch late in the match, Ricochet hit the 630 splash, got the 3 count, and left Tacoma with the US title. I'm sticking with Stomping Grounds for my number 5 pick. Kofi Kingston retaining the WWE Championship against Dolph Ziggler inside a steel cage. This is the other match from that show that I think is replay worthy, and it happened during the Kofi Mania title run that began at WrestleMania 35. Kofi winning the title was such a damn good underdog story. For context, Dolph lost to Kofi at Super Showdown after Xavier Woods got involved, so the cage match stipulation was supposed to take that excuse away. Ziggler kept trying to turn the cage door into his way out. He nearly escaped more than once, and late in the match he was crawling through it again, close enough this time that it looked like Kofi's reign was about to end. Kofi didn't have to climb over the top or hit Trouble in Paradise for the pin. He literally launched himself through the open door, hit the floor first, and retained the WWE title. The way in which Kofi closed out the match was the reason I picked this for my number 5 moment. During his reign, every title defense had that nervous feeling that WWE might decide the run was over. Tacoma got one of the better examples of that, with Dolph mere inches from taking the title, and Kofi basically throwing himself out of the cage to keep it. WCW breaks into my list here at number 4, where I've picked Scott Steiner defeating Booker T to win the vacant WCW United States Championship at Spring Stampede 1999. This event was also the only WCW show ever held in the Dome. Scott Hall had been stripped of the US title after acting WCW President Ric Flair claimed he couldn't find him. So instead of Hall dropping that belt in a match, WCW vacated the title and ran a tournament to crown a new champion. Booker and Big Papa Pump made it to the final, with Booker moving towards bigger singles matches, and Steiner getting louder, stronger, and harder to ignore. Booker had the athletic babyface comeback, but Steiner had the power and the shortcut. He caught Booker with brass knucks late, got the pin, and walked out with the US title. It's not the first Spring Stampede match people bring up, but for this episode, it won't be the last one either. The next 2 on the list are going to stick with WCW, but for number 3, I'm going to go with Goldberg getting his win back against Kevin Nash at Spring Stampede. This one's pretty easy to understand if you were watching WCW at the time. Nash was the guy who ended Goldberg's undefeated streak at Starrcade 98, and even with Hall and the cattle prod being part of the finish, the damage was already done. Goldberg's streak was over, the world title was gone, and WCW never really got back the feeling Goldberg had during that first run. So here in Tacoma, Goldberg against Big Sexy still had something behind it. It wasn't for the world title anymore, and it wasn't going to erase Starrcade, but it was still the match WCW needed to get back to. Goldberg won the way he was supposed to win. Spear, jackhammer, pin. No long explanation needed. At number 2, Diamond Dallas Page wins the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in the final Spring Stampede moment of my episode. DDP had been one of WCW's best success stories. He wasn't the guy who came in as a can't-miss prospect. He got over late in his career, worked his way up, and by 1999, fans had spent years watching him turn himself into a top guy. The match here in Tacoma had Ric Flair defending the WCW title against Hogan, Sting, and DDP, with the Macho Man as the special guest referee. That's a ridiculous damn amount of WCW history in one main event. One fall was enough to win it, so Page didn't have to beat everybody. He just had to be the guy who got the pin. The finish came down to DDP and Flair. Page hit the Diamond Cutter, pinned Flair, and won the WCW title for the first time. For a company that was already on creative fumes in 1999, this was one of the nights where WCW got it right. At number 1, I just had to pick Booker T against Buff Bagwell for the WCW Championship on Raw from July 2001. This isn't number 1 because the match was good. It was the drizzling shits. It's number 1 because the Tacoma Dome got one of the most infamous experiments of the entire invasion angle. On this episode of Raw, Shane McMahon announced that the main event belonged to WCW. They changed the ring skirt, used the redesigned red WCW logo in the show's graphics, which I loved, by the way. I used to have that t-shirt. Brought in Stacy Keibler as the ring announcer, put Nick Patrick in as the referee, and had Scott Hudson and Double A take over commentary. On paper, that should have felt huge. The WWF was testing whether WCW could exist inside its own television product, with its own look, its own announcers, and its own championship match in the main event. But to quote Bruce Pritchard, then the bell rang. Booker tried, but the whole thing felt awkward almost immediately. And Buff wasn't the guy who was going to fix that in the main event of Raw. These two had zero chemistry, and it was weird. Eventually, Stone Cold and Kurt Angle ran in, attacked both guys, and put the crowd out of their WCW reboot misery. For Buff, this night was pretty much his entire WWF run. He made one more brief appearance at the SmackDown taping the next night, also at the Tacoma Dome, but this match with Booker was his only televised WWF match. So there's my top 10 list of wrestling moments in Tacoma Dome history. WWE hasn't run this building since Stomping Grounds back in 2019, and I'd be surprised if they did anytime soon, since Seattle is their go-to stop in that area now. As always, tell me your favorite moment from the Tacoma Dome down in the comments. Next time, I'm covering the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, Michigan. Thanks for the house.